Why can't I press this button? Okay. I'm really sorry. Okay. Imagine your skin is sunken in, you have tubes in every orifice, you're mentally and physically exhausted. Your family surrounds you to say their goodbyes, but you're not even mentally cognizant enough to utter a simple I love you. This is a fate a lot of terminally ill patients face. But what if we legalized a way for them leaving when they really wanted to, before they begin to wither away and become something that they aren't? This is why I think assisted suicide for terminally ill patients should be legalized. The word suicide carries a lot of weight, especially when it happens to someone who wasn't supposed to leave this world anytime soon, and especially when they think that that's their only option. But for people who are terminally ill and dying, sometimes that is their only option, chiefly when assisted suicide is their only way to take control and leave on their own note. Unfortunately, everyone at some point has had to watch a loved one as they pass, whether it be from old age or terminal illness. But wouldn't you rather give your loved one the opportunity to go when they want to and in their proper mindset, and also in a way where you recognize them? With the legalization of assisted suicide, this could be possible. My goal is to lessen the stigma that surrounds assisted suicide, what it means, and the qualifications I think one should reach before being able to partake in assisted suicide. Ethical issues behind it, as well as why it should be considered when dealing with terminally ill patients who don't wish to suffer any longer than they have to. There are many people who have been diagnosed with a terminal illness and have been told that they have X amount of days, weeks, months, or years to live. They are faced with reality that they are going to inevitably fade away in front of their family and loved ones, and often at the expense of being poked and prodded with different medical instruments the entire time. So what if there was a way to bypass this and end on their own terms? I'm going to start by discussing why we need the stigma around assisted suicide to end, and why it is crucial for families with terminally ill family members to at least have the option of assisted suicide. Not only is the patient allowed to go without suffering, but it allows peace of mind for families as well as a preparedness for the family members passing. This study shows that aid in dying does not have a negative impact on family members of the deceased and may lead to a more prepared death, says Linda Ganzini. Because death is unfortunately out of everyone's control, the ability to be able to control it and prepare for it can lessen the blow when a family loses a loved one. The main focus does not have to be on a patient's need, but also on the people affected by the loss of a family member. Oftentimes, death is harder for people who are being left behind than the person leaving. So being able to take control can mean a lot to a family and lessen anxiety. Physically, death and dying can be taxing on a human, and I think that if the patient is terminally ill, they should be able to have the option of assisted suicide to avoid having to physically wither away. Mentally, it's also taxing. Not only is it scary being out of control, it is also seen that patients feel guilty for being a burden and would rather be remembered as the autonomous, independent person they once were, rather than a ghost version of their doped up version of themselves. The law has generally been considered successful, and patients have an option for physician-assisted death, according to Dr. Shakaran. Besides wanting, the patient needs to be mentally cognizant and aware to make the decision. There really isn't much of a solution to this, but rather more of a need to spread awareness and to counteract the stigma that assisted suicide has surrounding it. The decision to go through with it is not hastily made. The requesting person must provide explicit written consent and must be competent at the time the request is made, says Safeguards. Patients are educated thoroughly until doctors feel that the person is sound enough to utilize it. They must go through mental screenings and make sure that they are mentally sound and aware of the decision that they are making, and make sure that the patients are very educated on the topic. First, they express the importance of determining if the request is voluntary, informed, and without influence of others or mental illness, says Dr. Oren Flitcher. This is to ensure that the patient's decision is 100% their own and to make sure that patients know exactly what they are doing. Once the reasons are known and mental screenings have happened, assisted suicide can be considered. This opinion to give terminally ill patients the right to choose a life of suffering or to hasten this process is popularly held. There are a lot of misconceptions and fears surrounding the assisted suicide, as well as ethical boundaries that people are afraid of crossing. There are many people who disagree with my stance, stating that it's not fair to play God, and having someone else help another die is unethical and morally wrong. Author Capel states, an individual's feelings on the subject can often be reduced to a simple moral conviction about whether a person can aid another person in ending his life. Others state that the reasons behind the patient's decisions can often be missed or unknown completely, or that the decision to utilize assisted suicide isn't to alleviate physical suffering, but rather because they are depressed and feel like a burden to their family. Making this decision is a very big deal, and some people feel like it's not our decision to make. But I strongly feel that we should, even in death, still regain the rights to make those sorts of decisions, especially when terminally ill. Although it may be unlikely, one day you could be faced with a situation where someone or even yourself could be diagnosed with a terminal illness. And what if you wanted the option to end everything on your own terms without having to become a withered, sunken version of yourself, or watch as loved ones fade away? Assisted suicide may be a possible option for you, unless the proper awareness and destigmatization of assisted suicide is brought about to begin the legalization of it. Ways to take action and legalize assisted suicide. To take action, vote or go to website Death with Dignity and learn about ways that you could vote and take action in your state, and educate yourself further to see how and why assisted suicide could and can be necessary to a terminally ill patient. Although I do not agree with suicide, I think that allowing people who are terminally ill the option of assisted suicide to avoid suffering has no ethical drawbacks and could be beneficial in preserving the memory of our loved ones before reaching a state in their illness where they are unrecognizable. It allows people to take control over something that they have little to no control over, but should only be used for terminally ill patients. Family members of patients who use medications to hasten death also reported a higher quality of life rating in the last week of life than those who did not request aid in dying. It allows the patient to die the way they want to. Patients have been seen to be very grateful to be able to pass on their own terms without the guilt of being a burden to their family.